Good morning, TechConnex. This is Ryan Ellis, and I want to welcome you to the TechConnex podcast, the business of your business. This morning, I'm talking to Akshay Kalle. He is the CTO of Elasticare and the CTO of Pathway Communications. Both companies are Markham-based companies doing a lot of amazing work within the communication space and with AI and different technology platforms in the medical field. And I want to welcome Akshay this morning to the podcast. Akshay, thank you for joining me this morning.
Ryan, thanks so much for having me on.
I know we've talked numerous times about a whole bunch of different topics, but first I want to ask you about your position with Elasticare, and I want to shed some light on some of the amazing things you guys are working on. Can you tell the listeners about what Elasticare is doing, and where is Elasticare going within the AI space and within medical technology, especially within Canada?
Yeah, thanks. It's a good question, and I think the easiest way to kind of sum it up is that we're in a very accidentally interesting position. And what I mean by that is this entire COVID thing has really kind of shed a light on a whole bunch of different things that we're trying to tackle right now, not least of which is accessibility to high quality care. One of the things that we started off kind of at the outset, and I think any entrepreneurial, any technology journey really is meandering. You kind of go through a lot of different experiments, you try to figure out what's the problem to solve. And so the core of Elasticare ended up being trying to solve the cardiovascular disease cluster problem, which is to say that it's just a fancy way of saying that someone's got a heart problem, they end up having issues with blood pressure, they've probably got diabetes and a whole bunch of things in what they call a disease cluster. So we decided to come out with not only a device but a kind of a service that would help us analyze and give really high resolution feedback, really trying to democratize the healthcare. And in 2018, you look at the stats, it's actually the world's biggest killer by quantity. Tens of millions, 17 million people ended up dying of cardiovascular related diseases, CVD related diseases. So it's by far one of the biggest killers out there. So there's no single one, kind of provider that's going to end up going and solving all of these things. So we decided, okay, all these people are dying. There's many fewer hospitals compared to how many patients and how many people there are out there. What if we could end up broadcasting this service out to a wider market, really kind of democratizing it, giving patients control of their health records and their data, and then allowing them to kind of, see the doctors and get the appropriate treatment that they need, so that you don't end up having to go to the doctor only once something has gone wrong. That really was kind of the thesis of setting out there. Now, the hard part, of course, is trying to penetrate things like procurement and make the enterprise sales, and that's why we tried to go kind of lower down the food chain. And then I think we ended up having some traction, which was good. And I think if anyone who's worked in the medical device or the medical sales kind of industry, they know it's a long haul, because you're up against these massive powers, big insurance companies, big device makers, big kind of names. But kind of mid last year, towards late last year, we kind of got these, inklings that, we were joking about this too, going, some type of SARS-like pandemic, if this thing coming out of China really ends up being true, because you see this stuff coming out on Twitter and all that stuff, right? And we kind of kept our ear really low to the ground. And then sure enough, in kind of December, the stuff started to pick up streams on social media, and we're going, no, this can't be real. Another respiratory thing. This is going to be, a complete shit show, right? I mean, if it ends up hitting the world. And sure enough, we're kind of laughing sarcastically, going, no, this can't happen. And then by March, the entire thing just blows up. And so in a strange way, the demand for our product for remote monitoring of respiratory, kind of markers, cardiac markers, has just picked up and gone through the roof. And, we're trying to launch in countries like, India. Of course, we can't launch in China because, of multiple other reasons, but we were already talking to people in China to be able to launch it there, and in India and Southeast Asia. But the demand has really kind of gone through the roof because of this. And so what has this really done? It's really shown us there's a bunch of things that need to be solved and fixed, which is remote monitoring, because you can't have hallway healthcare. People are going to die there. And now it's more than ever before. So it's just kind of turned up the contrast dial on what works and what doesn't. We know what works is remote monitoring. We know what works is getting really high fidelity data and putting it in the hands of qualified practitioners. What we know what doesn't work is getting stuck in a hallway waiting for treatment just for triage, because you'll end up dying in that situation. And we think it's unnecessary. I think even the practitioners have said it's unnecessary, especially in a circumstance like this. So, COVID has really taught us a lot about, not even withstanding the rest of what's going on in other industries, but especially in medicine. There's so much that's broken and needs to be fixed. And, as tragic as it sounds, there's really an opportunity for a lot of really smart people out there to try and go and end up fixing a bunch of broken things.
Yeah, I guess one thing that keeps coming up is the data, and you're a data scientist. You have multiple degrees from University of Toronto and also with Cornell. What is the data saying about COVID within Canada, United States, and across the world? Are things, is what we hear the actual truth, or has there been a lot of misdiagnosis? What have you seen in the last 4 months? And could we expect a second wave? Is the second wave kind of already started, especially with some of the things that have happened in July within a multitude of different countries? What do you see? What is the data telling us, and how can the Canadian government improve, and hopefully it's learned from this experience, when it's collecting data, and how to dissect it and make it effective for preventative measures going forth?
Well, I think having kind of a bunch of degrees in numerical sciences, et cetera, may qualify me to speak from the data perspective. But full disclosure, I'm not an epidemiologist, right? I'm not a virologist, and I can't say, I'm an infectious disease expert. But what I can say is that if you look at the data that is available, the data that is out there, so, imagine the entire world as a bunch of facts, right? The entire Wittgensteinian thing of the world is all that is the case. We can only judge based on what we see. So just from a purely mathematical, philosophical perspective, you can only really make a judgment on the things that you decide to, first of all, you decide to acknowledge, and that's, which has been made available to you. So therein lies, I think, the first problem. Not all the data is being made available to us. And so that's one of the problems. This came out of, they're still fighting over facts right now. So this came out of China. Notwithstanding the controversy of that, we have to acknowledge, we have to make the distinction between politics and feelings and nationalism versus what's actually occurred. This thing clearly came out of a city in a province in China, and now it's spread throughout the world. But we don't know what the true, the spread of this thing is. So we're only judging based on the things that have been measured and reported. Mm-hmm. Right. So if we, for example, we say, oh, the number of cases the caseload's going up by, 10% a day, 200 cases per day. Okay, you're making an assumption that is all the cases out there. And then they're starting to, only later on, they started to talk about things like asymptomatic, et cetera. So what am I trying to say? Is I think people need to step back and say, if you're going to be structured in your thinking, you got to think about the fact that you won't really only make determinations in your life in general that are based on things that you are allowed to see. So you've got to start opening your eyes and poking into areas that maybe people aren't allowing you to see, or consider what else is there possibly that may be the case. That's not being shown to me. So I think this is one area that is certainly a big, kind of a blank spot for us. We don't know what the true rate of, what the true prevalence in the population is. They say by some estimates, the actual true prevalence of this thing is between 6 and 15 times. And I think they'd done some samples in the US where they said it might actually be 10x. So for every one person out there who is measured to have it, there are 10 others who are carriers, asymptomatic or not. So
Okay.
that might be the true prevalence out there. And this is just from some statistical sampling that they've done. Now that in itself may be, we may say, oh, is that heading towards herd immunity, et cetera? No, herd immunity, I mean, Sweden tried that experiment and it ended up not working out so well, right? I mean, you end up needing 70% plus of a population to have that. But there's going to be a lot of sick people, a lot of dead people along the way if we try and go along that route. So what is the data telling us? I think the data is telling us that there are a bunch of scientists out there who've tried to expose, certain facts about how it may spread, et cetera. But even to this day, a lot of the information about how the virus works, the statistics behind it, the epidemiology, autopsies, whatever they've done on that is only being held by a small handful of companies around the world with commercial interests, right? Like it's not like someone's taken this and just said, let's open source everything we know about this virus, the impact that it's had on whom, and let's do it in an anonymized way, and let's work with tech companies, right, to make sure that they've got the ability to do that, because the government sector does not have the full list of tools with which to be able to safely do this. So that's another thing that the data is telling us. And what, for me, the data is also saying is that this is also being very fear and politics driven. So rather than working with some tech companies who genuinely want to be able to help out, we've just decided, because it's the fashion these days to just go and, universally just go and take a shit on all tech companies, which I don't think is necessarily logical or fair. Sure, there's a bunch of things that some tech companies do that aren't necessarily fair, but we can't just paint all of them with the same, kind of stroke of distrust because something happened with Cambridge Analytica, a bunch of years ago, right? That there is data to be obtained if you want to be able to work with companies like Apple or Google, et cetera. You can anonymize that data and say, let's find out how this actually truly is spreading. So I don't think we're even, able to wrap our heads around, because there's so many things getting in the way of data-like thinking. So the data scientist part of me is going to say, okay, we've got a bunch of data, but are we really, as a society, allowing ourselves to accept that data? Like if I tell you an inconvenient truth, are you going to be willing to accept it? Right? Yeah. Or if I put something in the way for your political agenda, are you going to be willing to accept that? And I think we're seeing this in the US right now, where they're still not able to accept the data about masks because it's just become such a highly politicized situation. So, I mean, Fauci's out there, talking about this, and he's, world-renowned, doctor in this field, infectious disease expert. And he's throwing data left, right, and center at people, but people aren't willing to accept it. So what do? I mean, I try and go by the data, and I try and ask questions about, what's under the waterline, but that's about the best that I can do.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point, and it's, one of the, I guess, the education / miseducation about some of the practices that, the World Health Organization and, governments around the world talking about, staying clean, washing hands, sanitizing. But then obviously the biggest issue right now is the mask wearing. And every day there's another viral video of somebody, being physically removed for not, wearing a mask, and, fights are breaking out, and, it's people saying it's unconstitutional, all this stuff. It's very interesting to see why people are so up in arms about wearing a mask. Like, masks are being worn all over the world before COVID, and there's obviously a reason. Like, obviously air quality is an issue in a lot of countries. So I've just never understood what the big deal is about the mask wearing. So it's interesting that you bring that up, and like the fights that are occurring, and why people are just oblivious to the fact that you can get this at any point. And we were talking earlier offline about the start of July. A couple of countries are celebrating their birthdays, and then within 10 days there's another spike because of behavior that kind of that's going against the grain. But you can't really blame people for wanting to get together, because we are still tribal by nature. So I don't know, how does the government or health organization do a better job to squash the misinformation about mask wearing?
I don't know whether they can squash it, right? I mean, so there's you brought up a bunch of really important kind of factors, because I think in some sense, if we step back from just a purely scientific aspect of it, the purely statistical aspect of it, and look at this like an exercise in product psychology or design, this thing makes sense, because who ended up stroking these tensions of saying, okay, no, it's your right, it's your personal right, et cetera? You could, the politicians in the US could have made this a political statement by saying, it's patriotic to wear a mask. They could have done that. In fact, they're finally starting to do that now, because they've kind of hit that tipping point. So they could have easily gone and sold that as a product. So we call this stuff in product design or product psychology, right? I mean, so this is one of the other hats I have to wear. And my just as a segue, my career evolution has gone really from somewhat as a scientist, someone as a mathematician, to realizing that on an island is kind of useless if you don't understand the creatures who you're trying to affect, which is the human beings, right? So you really have to be a product psychologist and try and understand human nature as well. But if you look at it from the human nature aspect of it, a lot of this starts making sense, which is they sold the product of being on the winning team. So people, all the politicians who wanted to be on the winning team can just immediately park the objective truth in favor of their personal truth and then wrap a narrative around it. And that's exactly what's happened. So people have said, well, it's your personal rights are being violated if you're being told to wear a mask. And of course, people want to latch onto that because, to your point, we're all tribal. We want to belong to some type of a group. And so, people end up getting meaning in binding together with a common enemy and a common cause. So that's galvanized them. But now all of a sudden, we've completely switched to the other side. And it's going to be hard for them to change course, right? They've got to do a complete 180 going, your constitutional rights being violated, to all of a sudden it's being patriotic. And again, if the data is still sitting right there, even if the mask works 20% of the time, 10% of the time, that's 10% less infections you're going to spread out there, right?
Yeah.
So even if you're a carrier, and here's the irony, in a lot of Asian countries, when someone's actually sick, they tend to wear a mask so as to not infect other people. Yet in North America, et cetera, the rest of the world, we're not following suit. So as much as we can kind of cast aspersions upon, and in a very racist way too, because I mean, the entire anti-Asian, anti-Chinese sentiments that have come about, people are just being outright racist towards, Asian people of any type of, country that they may come from, is unfair, because they've tried to do a lot, because they've understood, they've lived in these tropical or very difficult circumstance countries, right, where they're crowded, the hygiene isn't as good, but they've learned to adapt a series of hygiene practices that have been, frankly, much better than what we've managed to politicize over here.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I feel the same way. Like like I said, stuff on social media, the videos, and especially when COVID entered Canada, and there was these videos of like misinformation talking about avoid certain areas or certain grocery stores because of the ethnicity, which is completely wrong. And you bring up a good point, and this is something that we've been discussing at TechConnex, is how do we address how do we address racism in the workplace, especially within tech? And it's a conversation a lot of our members have been bringing up, but it's hard to bring up when you haven't seen it. And are people willing to discuss stuff that's actually happened to them? Do people feel comfortable talking about the company they work in and maybe the working environment? It might not even be racism. It could be just having a boss who belittles you and and threatens you constantly to like harassment, sexual harassment, gentrification. How do we start those conversations, and like how do we move forward, especially with all the unfortunate activities that have happened within the United States? And obviously it's come here in North America, obviously worldwide protests for Black Lives Matters. And other initiatives. So like, how do we start these conversations, especially within the tech community?
I mean, it's a very loaded, big topic, right? But I think in some sense it's also related to the COVID conversation. But I'll kind of wrap that thread up, and I'll tell you why. Initially, when this started off, I remember seeing the mayors of a whole bunch of towns going, oh, absolutely get out to your local Chinese restaurants, patronize them, go out to the Japanese, Korean, whatever the case may be, go and get the Vietnamese food, etc. Don't stop the commerce. And then it started becoming about, if you don't do this, then you're all of a sudden, by definition, you're de facto a racist. And then I started listening, going, hold on. The data is telling me that it seems to be spreading in certain pockets. And by the way, it also started spreading through other communities which weren't just purely coming from China, right? There were other kind of local ethnic communities through which it started to spread in clusters. And that was the data that we were following. And then what we said was, look, we should try and avoid this type of restaurant, or we should try and avoid these cluster of just geographic locales within the city where we know it may be spreading. Then we got told, I think as a collective society, oh, you're being racist. So for people who are, not genuinely, racist, etc., they're open-minded, you kind of bristle a little bit going, hold on, I'm genuinely not racist, or what can I do to prove that? And the only way to prove that apparently was just by getting out there and going. And here's where we weren't following the data. And so that started to, that topic of even racism was coming up with COVID. Now, of course, there is a massive bunch of, very unfair racism being thrown around. People are being discriminated left and right, and very unfairly so. But we still need to partition the data, right? Like, just to prove that you're not racist against, mainland Chinese people doesn't mean you have to prove that by flying there right now to the epicenter of the virus and then walking around there. I mean, that there you're being stupid. You're not proving your open-mindedness, right? And I use that as a very extreme example, but we also have to be careful about it. I think lambasting the genuinely kind of data-driven people who are trying to stay safe in this type of environment and saying, if you're not out there, you're all of a sudden you're racist. Now, as for the George Floyd things, George Floyd was he's one out of hundreds of thousands, millions, and African Americans have been, I think they've taken some of the worst of it in America, because even though we can say this is one name, I mean, how many other, what my fear is that we forget about his name 1 year from now, or even 6 months from now. That's a genuine fear, that we'd forget about it and just kind of becomes a meme and people start making the t-shirts, right? We really have to kind of hit a tipping point and see it is kind of crappy. And in the tech world, there's a lot to fix in the tech world. I think part of that really kind of begins by fixing the bro alpha attitude that has become so symbolic of what was kind of considered a Silicon Valley. And I've met with, I've got friends in Facebook, I've got friends at Google, et cetera, in these companies, and they're not your typical alpha male bro, or they don't tend to espouse those horrible characteristics, right? But the image that comes out is that there's a minority of people within these kind of industries that really show the worst of what can happen with racial discrimination, with sexual discrimination, with that bullying type of attitude, passive aggressive, whatever. But the vast majority of people I've met have not been like that, and they couldn't be nicer, more accepting people. Yes, some of them are maybe genuinely misinformed, but when we talk about how do we eliminate it, I think we have to try and look at the causes of what's resulting in this type of discrimination. What is causing people to behave in a certain way, and to not promote those types of things, and to try and have more of a welcoming attitude towards ideas, because it's so cutthroat, it's so competitive, and in some strange justification, people might say, well, those are the characteristics that are required for being hyper competitive. I don't know if I buy that. I don't know if you have to be an asshole to be really empathetic and to make a great product and to drive it. And I think it's a very dangerous thing to be able to just get ourselves really enamored and obsessed with that Steve Jobs type of image and say, well, here is kind of the paragon of what it means to be a great product creator. You're absolutely ruthless, and you might be terrible to your family, and you're screaming and shouting to your staff and everyone in there. And that's kind of a prerequisite for being a complete genius when it comes to product management or as entrepreneurship. And I don't buy that explanation at all. I think it's a very dangerous precedent to set. We have to choose our heroes and our gods carefully when it comes to the tech industry. And this is a conversation that we need to start having, because this is where this will seed a lot of that discrimination in there. Like, if everyone's going to say, hey, I'll meet you at the golf course, or let's go out for drinks, why do we make the presumption that golf and drinks is the only way to be able to associate with someone? Me as an individual, I don't play a heck of a lot of golf. I don't go out and copiously drink. There's other stuff I like doing. Why can't we just sit down and chill over something else, right? Let's sit under a tree and meditate, right? Like, there's a bunch of other things you can do. So I think the concept of that broness it is a toxic thing, and it's not just related to sexual discrimination. It's also for that type of racial discrimination. And there's a whole bunch of things that within the industry we're very, very fortunate and entitled for, that we kind of get that ability to empathize and sympathize baked out of us almost by definition. And that's, I think, one of the things that really ails the worst parts of the tech industry. There are, again, like I said, some really amazing parts and some really great companies that are trying to do things on the ground and really make the world a better place, but they aren't being given the light of day because they're not billion-dollar companies, right? Their valuations aren't up there. So if we only tend to value controversy and we only court companies that have gotten these huge valuations, the correlation between kind of dodgy behaviors and high valued companies is definitely more than 50%. And that's something that also kind of desires asking, right? Are we going to go and fund more minority-based companies or more women-founded companies, or companies that are not doing the next billion-dollar problem? Maybe they're just trying to help out girls in sub-Saharan Africa attend school. That doesn't sound like a sexy problem, but it's a very vital thing to be involved in, just for us as the human race. But I mean, you and I both know this, that good things aren't necessarily going to be the most funded. So, it's a long answer, I think, to a very complicated question, because part of it is baked into our economic culture. And I think those types of things definitely induce behaviors that are toxic and negative in that sense. And I don't know what the answer to that is going to be, short of having a very mass rethink in what we constitute as the economy.
You bring up an interesting, quite like 2 points. Maybe I'll start with this one. How does the role and responsibility of tech, like, going forward, do you foresee, like you said, like maybe doing the good is the way to go? And will the next generation of startup companies, individuals that are in high school now that are witnessing everything that's happening, will this spark a change in responsibility of tech going forward? And will it be about the greater good versus the dollar? Like, is that possible from everything that has happened here in 2020? And for the young people that are, the young scientists, the young mathematicians, the young entrepreneurs, potential business people of the future, like our children, will this impact their future? And will they start seeing things differently? And will tech look different in 20 years? Like, what are your thoughts about, the responsibility of tech?
Well, I think I want to be optimistic, and to some extent I am optimistic, because access to information has become a lot more democratized, right? So you can't ascend, you don't necessarily need to ascend the corporate ladder or ascend the ladder of any type of educational institution, because if you end up having a degree, you're just order of magnitudes less likely to suffer from depression. You're less likely to commit suicide. You are more likely to have the ability to support yourself in a meaningful way if you end up having some type of education. I didn't say necessarily degree, I meant education. And when we talk about poverty and discrimination and why people can't seem to, why minorities or immigrants can't get to the top of these, kind of corporate ladders, isn't in large part because they may not have necessarily access to education. Try taking a single Black mother who is trying to, work for her kids, and what kind of shake is she going to have to be able to get it? We can't give her a fair shake to get a degree. And so what does that say for her ability to kind of get on, right? So access to education in the US, I mean, it's a, what is a $1.5 trillion problem over there, educational debt, and that stuff isn't forgiven. But now, we've got this information era, and again, with COVID, you could tie this back to that conversation. It's changed the argument even about universities. People are really starting to question, do I even need that thing? LSU's got a pool, shaped like that. And I think, people have seen probably the Hassan Minhaj documentary about that, where he talked about this. I mean, you've got these huge endowment funds, and but they don't spend it towards where it actually needs to be spent. And people don't end up having the easy access to education, and we have this polarization in society. And that in itself is a huge cause for discrimination, why we aren't able to have good enough representation from all aspects of society, whether it's ethnicities, genders, beliefs, etc. within there. I really am a strong proponent of open and freely accessible education. I think that's why Canada does a lot better, because you don't have to bankrupt yourself or mortgage your house in order to give your kid a good education. But I also question now these days the value of, kind of university. So, to answer your question, I think access to education is really important for kids. And I'm optimistic as we proceed into the future, it'll just become even more and more accessible. Khan Academy, I think that was a fantastic thing to go out there. People like Andrew Ng, they've managed to openly, publish a whole bunch of lessons, amazing lessons out there, out on the internet, to teach people about AI, deep learning. What you can basically get instruction in almost any subject you want. The only thing is you've got to build yourself a curriculum for it and kind of a path on the internet. You don't need to go to a university anymore. You just have to be able to demonstrate that you can do stuff. So yes, I'm optimistic that our kids are going to be able to contribute in meaningful ways out there. I've personally worked with someone who I later realized, I used one of these contractor sites on the internet, was a teenager sitting in kind of an internet cafe in Lagos in Nigeria. And this kid had an amazing command of AI technologies. And I'm going, how the hell did you manage to learn all this sitting in an internet cafe? I mean, that blows my mind. No degree, no PhD. And I think that's the type of thing that you want. And, this kid was able to earn some, he's able to earn some money for himself as a consequence. And he did some fantastic work. So the boys and girls out there who are going to be able to do this in the future, I think especially for girls, having that access to education is so vital. Having access to open information is so vital, but we have to make sure we don't color it completely with corporate interests, right? And dangle that kind of advertising necessarily carrot out there. But I'm optimistic for our children's future that they will be able to do this stuff, because now there's less and less barriers along the way. I don't necessarily need to think about taking out 3D mortgages just to be able to send my kids to university with the hope that the name of that university is going to somehow end up getting them in there. And I think employers are also starting to recognize, you can end up having a great bunch of degrees. And I'll tell you this, even in grad school, man, when I went there at Cornell, there were people, or U of T, who just outright did not deserve to be there. Like I worked my ass off, but there are people who just did not deserve to be there. They got in because, mommy and daddy donated a lot of money to the university. But you couldn't end up getting the job then. But now here comes this, open kind of education system, and you get tested and you get compensated based on what you deliver, right? So it's, and I think that's a great thing. So I'm certainly optimistic about the future that, the conditions we have right now, which have been these kind of ivory towers, will get broken down.
Yeah, you make it's an interesting, thought, and, the future of education, I guess, really around the world. Obviously, with schools closing like prematurely right across the board, in like universities, students being sent home to learn online. what is going to happen for the future of of universities after COVID, because I know there's a lot of schools that they're not going to be opening up. Their students are going to have to learn online, but yet they're still paying. Tuition is not going to change, even though they're not even stepping foot on the university grounds. So is this the start of the re-education of students? Like, are we, like you said, are we going to be doing more open source, like the Khan Academy? Are those going to be more prolific, or more online universities like Athabasca, University of Phoenix? They provide amazing, incredible education experiences, but everything's online. Are we gonna see more of those situations coming up, or is a Yale going to start something like that, or Princeton, or U of T? Like, where is this going to go?
Well, they've already, I mean, some of those universities that you mentioned, they've already started it. Like Stanford's already started it. They've already started putting up courses online because they knew that at MIT, it's the same thing, right? You can do a whole bunch of distance education, which if you asked them 10 years ago, they'd have scoffed at it and gone, oh, we don't do that. This is far beneath us, and they kind of took this very snotty approach to it. But now they realize not only is there money in it, but I think the accidental thing is they're doing a good thing. But I think from their perspective, they look at it from, monetary perspective, because of people, like Khan Academy, or really great instructors that have just gone out there and said, you know what, I'm just going to go and start putting my lessons up there openly, or I'm just going to, outside the university, I'm just going to start putting my lessons up online. If you look at the compensation of what teachers end up getting paid out there, like at the university level, the majority of the teaching isn't done by these tenured professors, and tenure is becoming more and more difficult to come by, right? So a lot of it's done by TAs, a lot of it's done by teaching assistants, by instructors who don't end up getting full-time secure jobs. And oftentimes they're working 2-3 jobs, at a time. This is one of the reasons I didn't stay in grad school, right? I took my, second time around, I came back from Cornell, came back here to U of T, and said, you know what, I'm going to go for, I want to end up getting my PhD. And I think two things happened. One is I realized, okay, you know what, I clearly liked academia less than I liked applying the stuff to industry and getting out there. So I think you tend to do good things and the things that you like doing. I realized I just didn't like sitting there and having my theorem kind of named after me, and then getting something that would have put me out of industry for a long time. But the other aspect of it was a really depressing kind of statistically a really bad life, where if you look at how even instructors in academia are, you have a very, very low chance of actually success, right? The number of people who end up getting, well-paid tenure positions after getting a PhD, and for all practical intents and purposes, working these really insane hours, it's very low, your likelihood of success. You spend 5, 6, 7 years doing something with the hope that you'd end up getting, a well-paying job. And guess what? It's not going to be the case. So I think even for employees of the university system, from a teaching perspective, even they've, finally started to say, okay, you know what, I think there's a better way than this. And so, yeah, universities, they're going to be in a spot of bother, I think, at least for the short term, because people are starting to question it. But long term, I don't know. I think they might end up joining the bandwagon of, remote education and just start charging exorbitant fees for that. $20,000, for the XYZ university of some certificate or the other, right? You can end up having some type of a business analysis degree, right, given by some really prestigious university, whose name shall not be mentioned. But I think that's exactly what they're starting to do, is that they're going to take an opportunity to be able to start making money off the entire remote thing, and then people are going to start wanting to be associated. So I think it's going to be cyclical. I don't know whether the entire university system is going to kind of come crashing down. These things all go in cycles. They ebb and they flow, and people figure out to kind of make a money. But certainly there has been some type of a tipping point that's been crossed where people are starting to realize that the online path really is useful in both ways.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's because I have a lot of friends who have done their MBAs, and there's a lot on the line, because you have to hold down your current job. You have to, you're married, you have kids. Like it's a big risk, that might not pay off in the end. Fortunately, a bunch of my friends have been successful, more successful after doing an MBA, but I know that it's not the same for everybody. I guess that's more, this is a perfect segue for, getting an MBA, working within businesses, the economy right now, and, how do we stay competitive, and what should, like, maybe more focus on Canada, like what do we need to do to kind of bounce back? Because I know we've seen reports that the economy will be back to pre-March levels in about 18 months. But, some people are saying that we're 2 years out. But on the other hand, we've talked about the information, and, we get snippets of information here and there, what truthfully, like, are we, are we in a good spot right now? Or is, we're another thing is going to come in, like another recession or another economic crisis. What do you see, to stay competitive, and, like, what do we need to do to stay, competitively within Canada and, throughout the world?
Look, short term, here's my prediction. Of the short term, we're going to be okay. These things kind of, again, like I said, they ebb and flow. You can talk to any, microeconomists, they'll tell you the same thing, right? That, they'll be optimistic. Bank of Canada is going to have stimulus measures, and we'll be back to our oil economy. But you can't be back to oil economy and run that forever. There are other things eventually that a country should kind of run itself on, right? It should be reasonably able to contribute to some form of an ecosystem where there's production and consumption of goods and services in a value chain, in some type of an economy as such. But again, we have geopolitical constraints here, and we have huge dependencies. So you can't do everything on your own, right? One country can't be entirely self-supporting in that sense, right? Be completely isolated. So long term, I worry, right? Because we're such a outsourcing dependent culture in North America as it is. And we're also extremely consumption driven. That's, I think, a mindset issue. And we tend to focus more on things as opposed to, the relationships of people, which statistically you could say, okay, this is a very male versus female type of mindset driven, but that's also what is driving our mindset kind of within as consumers in North America. But long term, I'm not optimistic about, Canada, unless we really change how we do business, which is to say that we need to be more self-reliant and rely on other industries and start bringing them back up to speed in a globally competitive way, right? Like, if I were to ask you, would you tell your son and daughter it's okay to go into the trades, right? Would you encourage your son or daughter to say, okay, if you want to become a general contractor or a master plumber or an electrician, or you want to have your own trade company, would you tell your kids that?
100% yes.
You are in the minority. You are in a significant minority, because we talk about MBAs, we talked about getting these degrees, we talked about everyone is trying to climb this stuff. But I know most of the stuff, any tradesperson who's come and done work at my house, that we've worked at our office, etc. They work crazy hours. Yes, they work very, very hard. But there's also a shrinking number of them, so that they're driving up the rates. Now, who the hell is going to pave driveways? Who's going to come and fix, sinks? Who's going to go and build houses? This is becoming not as sexy a thing to do. And I think this is a great illustration of our, kind of this North American mentality of only going for these white collar jobs at the expense of doing things that are on the ground. And I think no more is it more well and more starkly illustrated than our dependence on the outsourcing economy. We don't manufacture forks or bicycles here in North America as much as we just get them imported in. And we've made that a little bit of a morally hazardous situation, right? Because it just goes to the lowest bidder. And people suffer and they die for some of the things for a lot of the things that we consume. We get clothing out of Bangladesh, but I don't know if you've ever seen the conditions under which some of these factories run in Bangladesh. They're abhorrent. We talk about fair trade coffee, but we're not talking about fair trade phones or laptops or a table or a bottle of water that we look at, but a lot of it is made in this conveniently morally hazardous situation where we've made it someone else's problem and we just kind of turn a blind eye to it. So that, I think, you talked about the Canadian economy kind of rebounding. If we continue to do that, we will put our hands, we'll put our fates in the hands of other countries, which, if they don't have a system that's aligned with our interests in a global sense, in a mutually equitable sense, then there can be a lot of tension, which is exactly where we are geopolitically between the US and between China right now. As much as they say they want to decouple, they can't. And so Canada's also, we're in a much more precarious situation than the US. The US actually has manufacturing, et cetera, capabilities. Here, we don't. We've only got 35 million people. We don't have 350 million. And out of that, the majority of them are not trained, to the extent that we need to be able to bring manufacturing and some of that stuff back in here. So yes, I personally, I would encourage my kids, go into the trades, because not only is it lucrative, it's the right thing to do, and you're going to end up contributing to the economy. And so in that sense, I worry about, Canada or North America as a whole. We've got to have that mind shift to say it's okay to do things that don't require an MBA. It's okay to do things where you don't need a PhD or you're not a banker or a hedge fund manager, because that's not the stuff that's going to make the world go round. And in fact, to do that, if you continue to rely entirely on an outsourced model, will only end up exacerbating, this type of geopolitical tension that we're in right now. I think this is exactly where we've landed up. I mean, I remember I talked about this with an economist about 10 years back. I don't want to kind of take his name, but he's a well-known, gentleman. I remember asking him, what do you think about this entire, dependency? And he called it out. He said that, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, kind of at the latest, this is going to result in some major problems between import-exporting countries, because they're not going to be aligned in the way in which they work. So Canada's got its work cut out for it on a, the 10, 15-year time scale. I'm not worried about recessions because they come and go. Everything's kind of cyclical. I'm worried about more of these mind shifts where we end up getting relegated completely down to the bottom over here as kind of an irrelevant nation. That's really kind of a worry for me.
Yeah, it's I think it's on a lot of Canadians' minds. It's like, yeah, what does the future hold, especially with the amount of debt that we've taken on in the last 4 months. Businesses, like a lot of people going out of businesses having to pivot to adapt to the current situations. Obviously, trades are an essential service. So yeah, where do we go from here when it comes to those things? And I have a lot of friends that are in the trades, and they're very successful. I'd say probably more successful than individuals that are working, as you said, white collar jobs. They do live a different lifestyle, and you can be envious. Like sometimes I'm envious of some of the things my friends are able to do with working as a skilled professional. It kind of leads me to kind of the next segues, like with the trades, but also, where do we go for technology progression, and how do we keep tech within Canada, and how do we, pump out, get more people involved with tech, but also obviously has to be a fine line of, we also need the skilled workers. And how do we stay like globally competitive, going forth?
I'll tell you, to quote Austin Powers here on that one, that that train has sailed. Globally, competitively in terms of technology, we are not. We may laud ourselves by saying, we've started up, this incubator here or this little company over here that kind of came up. For every Shopify that we have over here, there's 100 of them in China, probably 10 of them small companies like that in the US. I mean, yes, one, it's because of our population, but we can't have 350 million people kind of living here in the tundra, right? I mean, it's kind of a difficult place to live in physically. But we've tried to build that Scandinavian model, but insofar as technology is concerned, in my mind, at least from what the numbers say, we've already lost that battle to China. And again, it's due in no small part to education, right? And this is the mindset shift again, like I said, right? It's really coming down to the methodology of education too. How do we train and retrain our workers over here? So when people talk about, things like automation, et cetera, I'm not worried about the plumber or the electrician or the carpenter getting their job automated, because that's actually tremendously hard to automate. You look at, the Boston Dynamics, they've got these robots jumping up and down and kind of running like a, trying to imitate the biological, but there's clearly other better ways to be able to automate the physical. But in terms of automating the physical, I mean, even self-driving cars, right? There's so many things that are really complex to be able to do there. So I don't know whether tomorrow or even in the next 5 years, self-driving cars are just going to come in and put every cabbie or even Uber out of business. From a technology perspective, I don't see that happening as soon, because we've got a long way to go in terms of AI to be able to make that happen. But that's another different thing altogether with AI. Automation, honestly, I think it's going to threaten more of the white collar jobs than it is going to be threatening blue collar style jobs. Like the management consultant and the data scientist actually needs to be more afraid than the plumber in terms of their jobs and competitiveness. So if we focus entirely on trying to teach our kids to code, at the age of 5, which I think is a disastrous idea, you should be teaching them fundamentals on how to think. Then you're only going to you're going to be focusing on an area where you've already lost the battle. You should be focusing on trying to build up rudiments. And this is where I think countries like China really, leave the politics aside for a second, right? You look at the education system over there. It has its own extreme of being very ruthless and rote-based. A lot of the children there, they have to memorize the equivalent of 10,000 characters, and because of ideograms and characters when they're children. What average 7, 8-year-old has memorized 10,000 different things and has learned how to write them perfectly in North America? We don't focus on that type of thing. So yes, it's the same thing in India. I mean, it's very heavily rote based, and I spent some of my education in India. I came here when I was 9, but that kind of got beaten into me. I mean, you write the letter Q in a wrong way. I mean, you don't get the best marks, or you kind of get smacked upside the head for it. Now, I'm not saying you bring that type of hard rote system over here to the exclusion of any type of creativity, but the focus on fundamentals is really something that needs to be more emphasized over here, as opposed to just trying to jump towards technology education. And it's also letting people know, what, it's okay to go into something that isn't just purely coding. Because in 5 years, there's already, people looked at stuff coming out of OpenAI, GPT-3, or it's starting to generate code now. And frankly speaking, if you're going to say buy Canadian or buy American, if you're a business person, why would you pay someone here $70 an hour, $50 an hour, when someone in Vietnam is offering to do it for 15 or 10? So it's kind of a, we're focusing on a little bit of a dead problem. And this may, this has gotten me into, kind of lots of arguments before. And I've gotten a lot of flame mail for this type of stuff, saying, how could you say, don't teach kids to code? But I'm saying, park your feelings for a second, right? Like, listen to your feelings, Luke. You know it to be true. You can't compete on a global stage if your entire industry is focused on labor arbitrage. And this is where we've got to say, how do we end up becoming more resilient as a society, more ability to be more holistic, as opposed to just trying to focus only on code? That's not our long-term future. So I think I'm answering your question kind of a long-winded way, and it keeps on coming back to education and kind of these mindset shifts. But Canada, if we don't play this right, again, this is what could end up putting us down, right? We imagine we come out 3 years later and we go, oh, you know what? We came up with our first package for automatically generating neural nets. China's going to look at us and go, oh, that's great. That's so cute. We did that 15 years ago. In terms of the AI race, they're ahead. The tech race, they're ahead. Manufacturing race, they're ahead. They can end up filling 10 football stadiums with all the engineers that they've got for manufacturing, the full stack of skills. We can't even fill up probably a small lecture hall here in Canada, right? So just in terms of the density, we've got to figure out how to make our economy more sustainable in a different way that allows us to work more harmoniously, where we've got kind of mutually equitable interests. And that's the Canadian equation that we have to figure out, because we are if we try and punch too much above our weight in terms of population, et cetera, this is not a battle we can win. We've got to figure out a different calculus to this equation, right? So for us to try and go on the global stage and say we truly are a global leader, we're not. That's not what the data says. It's the patriotic thing to say, but it's not what the reality is. So we have to figure out, how do we consume and how do we contribute in a different way? Yeah, so sorry to pour cold water on that one, but I mean, this is the, you asked me for my opinion and I'll give it to you.
Well, yeah, it's it's a hard pill to swallow. Yeah, like we are a small small populace in the second largest country in the world, where most of our country is inhabitable. Yeah, it's a great question and a great answer to something that's probably on a lot of people's minds, like more so and like more than ever, is viability, the future Canada, because there's so many different stories. Like the economists can be positive about the outcome, but like how are we going to get there and how are we going to maintain? Because there's other people saying the opposite, which like, to be honest, scares the crap out of me. Where do we go? Like I definitely don't want there to be strife, civil issues, this country breaking apart. I'm not going to get into like some of the politics of our country, but it's a scary thought to think that Canada might not be the same, or things are going to change, and like who's going to benefit and who's not going to benefit from some of these changes that are coming down the pipe. I guess one thing is the education system, and it's on a lot of people's minds. We were talking about the university, but public school, like I don't want to get too political on this, but who makes the decision, or is it a public thing? Do parents go to the boards about changing some of the curriculum because stuff is outdated? And some, really some subjects are, null and void. What, like you said, and like with education, like what should we really be looking at? Like what should a 5 or 6 year old know, like truly know, versus, not knowing? Your thoughts on that?
Look, I mean, I can only say this from the perspective of a parent, right? I'm not an educational theorist, but so I'm going to look at it from a couple of lenses. One, what is going to make a child happy? The other is what is going to make them productive in terms of the world, right? What will make them a good contributor? What will allow them overall, forget even in terms of commerce, right? It's the same thing when you're playing on a playground. There is a commerce of sorts, and you need to be able to relate with other children. And you end up building good skills, and that's a good metaphor for an economy, right? You're playing on a playground. You have to learn how to, have manners, yield when it's, when you should yield, stand your ground where you need to stand your ground, and, be able to assert yourself, communicate your ideas, your needs, when to say something, when not to. So that's complex, right? I mean, and you can't necessarily get the best results by asking kids to memorize that. It's a lot like trying to brute force do what we're doing right now with AI. We're trying to teach it mimicry, and that's what it is right now. It doesn't, a lot of AI doesn't necessarily have understanding, but with children, you can't train them like you're trying to teach them, computers, because you've got this entire genetic kind of component built in there. So a lot of that education needs to just be to socialize these children a lot better than we're doing right now. And that includes not just sticking them in front of a screen. I think we've certainly taken a lot of steps backwards by doing that, going, because the internet's available, let's just make them watch this stuff every day, right? You should have this many minutes for a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, you're already starting to teach them coding, you're already starting to make them watch this much stuff. No, they should be out there, looking at caterpillars, getting dirty, rolling around in the mud, building that sense of, falling down, getting hurt in small, tolerable, safe ways, and building up the resiliency, bumping into one another and learning how to, draw boundaries and establish them, and learning how to cooperate. That's real world education that they're going to need. And you have to establish that at a very formative age. This is not stuff that you can learn with a computer. As much as our as our we have this great obsession with all things tech. And because there's this mandates, again, if we're going to have to talk about the politics, because there is a political agenda to demonstrate to parents, to the world, that your taxpayers' dollars are doing good. Therefore, we've put a bunch of Macs in every classroom. I don't think that has a necessarily good foundation if you talk to a psychologist. And how do we form our education system? Well, I think it needs to be a confluence of not just psychologists, but you've got to talk to an economist, you've got to talk to a psychologist, you have to talk to parents as well, who are the stakeholders, and you have to look at what are we trying to build for the future here. We have to build resilient human beings that are capable of living and forming sustainable societies that do good for one another as well as for the planet. It sounds like a very, a very cliche, a stereotypical statement to make, but it's tremendously difficult. What we're talking about is world building. And, when do you know when to, when to lie and when not to? When do you try to make, the sacrifice hit or over here? Those are things that you're going to have, the philosophies you have to bake in with young children at a very young age. And the ability to be able to be resilient and be able to tolerate failure is very important. And right now, I think, as a parent, I can see is the path in which we're currently going by simplifying things in terms of their complexity and trying to have an over-reliance on technology is not only ill-informed, it's actually very harmful. Teaching, computer literacy, yes, it's great, but they should be out there learning just their basics. Teach them, a 7-8-year-old should be learning their times tables and learning rudiments. But you can't go to the new math and say, well, 2 + 3 happens to be smiley face, lightning bolt. And as we know, smiley face, lightning bolt happens to be 5. No, sometimes there is no substitute than just, taking your fingers out and counting that 2 + 3 is 5, etc. Right? Teaching that for, an SK or a JK. There is just no substitute for just getting that done. Just like learning skills. You got to learn the skills, because if you learn, trying to figure out, if you only learn songs, you're going to have a limited vocabulary in terms of what you can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
you got to start off with scales, and we're not teaching our kids as much scales. We're trying to teach them songs. I think that's probably the best metaphor, and that's why they're not necessarily as resilient and as applicable in the long term as they could be, especially I think for like the younger age.
Yeah, I don't want to. Well, I'm going to continue on with this conversation, but one thing that my wife and I always talk about is, when did things change? And I'm gonna when you and I were growing up, and we were out all day. We literally didn't come home until the lights came on the street lights. We would have dinner. The world's quickest dinner. We'd be in and out of the house within 15 minutes, back outside playing. And yeah, amount of wrecking bikes, all the crazy stuff we used to do, build forts, GI Joes, crazy stuff. And then, within the last, I don't know, it could be longer, but my kids are 10 and under. I don't see the kids, I don't see kids doing what we did. And it always comes back to when did everything start changing? Yeah, and I agree, resilience, just knowing the basics, you should know how to boil water. You should be able to, make your own food, do your own laundry, kind of, easy. You should be able to do easy hygiene, and the problem solving. We always wonder, because I live in a big neighborhood and it is dead silent. And all summer you only hear the birds and the wind pass by, and you might hear whispers here and there, but when did things change to where we are now with some of these things?
So I'll circle back. I mean, again, this is, my observation on this, and I can't say it's necessarily a fact. This is my observation. It comes down to, again, I think product design. We're creatures of habit, but we're also biological creatures that choose to maximize our benefit with the least energy expenditure possible. Now, that can lead us to do a great many horrible things as well, right? We can end up picking up, smoking. We'll end up doing, falling into really bad habits. We tend to just, get overweight and not actually, because it's hard to do that stuff. It's hard to get up and move and all that. But if you provide a product that says, look, you can end up getting that same dopamine rush, or you'll end up getting that same sense of quasi self-validation and valuation, and yet you don't have to go out there and work for it. You can just end up posting something silly, or make a silly, emoji, or end up having some avatar on there on the latest messaging platform. Someone's going to give you 50 likes, and then you get that great rush, as opposed to saying, let me go out there, let me hang out with my friends, let's go put on a play, let's go make some funny masks made out of leaves, and then let's pretend to be animals or whatever it is, and let's make the kids laugh. I remember doing that type of stuff when I was a kid, right? Or telling crazy jokes, or just holding a neighborhood bike race for all the kids, and then going out and grabbing freezies, right? And learning how to, the littlest one of us, all of them, we got to figure out he doesn't get, he or she doesn't get left behind. Learning that type of empathy. You can't get that by doing apps. Apps are easy. And that's, I think, this entire exercise in product design. So from my observation, that changed when we had miniaturization of a lot of tech. And so when you talk about walking outside, I see it too. I see kids, and this is not a word of a lie. I see them. I walk down the neighborhood here. I see them in the parks. There's kids sitting on swings. Not a word of a lie, man. They're sitting on the swing, but they're looking down at their phone. Yeah. They're sitting on a swing and looking at their phone. Now you may say, well, this isn't the case with all kids. Well, thank God for that. But I can certainly say the numbers of this are increasing because they're also getting kind of addicted to tech. And so in terms of the ethics of technology, this is something, you asked me this, a little bit before in our conversation today, what is incumbent upon technology companies to think about is that we have tremendous power in terms of how we shape the world. Now we are doing this. Now, if I've got a choice, I can decide to go and make a few million or billion selling these types of products, and then try and justify it somehow, or say, well, I'll leave that up for the experts to try and figure out. I'll leave that for the child psychologist to figure out, why 9-year-olds are on antidepressants, because they're on, it's not really the fault of the social network, but it's not, because that's what's in your 401k. That's what's in your retirement package, right? Like you've bought the stocks into these large companies here. And so this is an exercise in kind of, product design that's shaping our kids. So we as parents have that choice to make. Look, it's going to be harder for you to get up and take your kid for a walk, or you can plant them in front of a TV, or, and put on something on Netflix, or just give them that game, whatever the newest iteration of that endorphin and that inducing kind of a game is going to be. But that's a choice we're going to have to make. It was hard for us to get up and go out on a really beating hot sunny day and, come back for water and, stay out there to your point, right, till the lights came on. But that's hard to do because you have to get out there. I think the difference was we had no alternative. Right? There was nothing in the house to do, right? I remember my mom just saying, look, what are you doing in here? Get out, right? She had stuff to do. My dad had stuff to do. He's like, look, you're just sitting in the house. I don't want to see you in here. Either you're doing your homework or you're out there playing.
Well, I know that there's, with this conversation, there's, I guess there's some ups and downs, some negatives and some positives with, everything that's, happened, and like, where do we go forward? But I guess one of the things that I've seen, there's a lot of negative with, obviously with COVID, the isolation, being stuck at home. But on the other hand, kids might not be out, or maybe they are starting to be pushed out, because like with my kids, they're on tech, with the technology that we have in the house. They're at a point where they're bored now. They're like, they don't want to, so they're reverting back to doing, we do family bike rides every single day, and they're actually excited to go about, doing 10, 12 kilometers. out
Yeah.
on the trails. And I also work in the bike industry, and we have no bikes to sell. Everything is out the door. So like
Yeah.
some of the positives of this is people are becoming more active, and I can't say for every sport, but like with the biking industry, where there being a shortage of bikes right across the world, and the fact that we have very limited supply, and the amount of calls we take every single day asking about certain bikes, and the amount of bikes that were sold were a lot of couples, and a lot of people were saying we need an outlet. We can only watch so much Netflix. We can
Right.
work, and so maybe with COVID, there's been a turn to, kind of some big being old school, getting out there. Obviously, this summer is crazy hot, so you obviously have to be careful about how much you put into outdoor exercise, because you don't want to come back with heat stroke or being dehydrated, or you don't want to be stuck somewhere if you're hurt or something's going on. But like for me, the amount of biking, and we talked about this earlier, is biking's been my outlet, for mental well-being, and the amount of people out there walking, hiking, and I've even seen people rollerblading. Like, I haven't seen rollerblades in 15 years, and people are
Yeah. Yeah.
busting out old school equipment, and it's like it's being like they're being reverted back to when they were a child, and like it's
Yeah.
amazing to see
And
the
see, I'm
smiles.
encouraged. I'm encouraged by that, right? Like when I watch that, I'm encouraged by people reverting to kind of discovering, oh my God, there's beautiful sunshine, and I can rollerblade. That's great because I don't have, I've gone through almost every tolerable movie that I can see on Netflix. Before going into the I've seen everything on Disney Kids. I've seen everything on Netflix. I've seen everything on, CBS All Access. Like, what am I going to do next, right? I can start watching Golden Girls reruns. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with watching Golden Girls reruns. That was an excellent show,
You gotta love
right?
Blanche.
You cannot beat B. Arthur, right? So, and Estelle Getty. So the fact that I still remember these actresses' names should have told you what a compelling and impact, kind of they made on my life. But anyway, the point is, yeah, people are starting to rediscover this stuff, and I think that's awesome. But I think it's also choices people are making, right? Like for every 3 people that you see out there, 4 people out there, there's a whole bunch that are actually not out there, right? So I think again, we judge based on what we see, right?
Yeah.
So I think for the portion that we do see getting out there, yes, it's absolutely, you're right, it's encouraging. But there's a sizable portion, or an entirely unknown portion out there that is still not out there, that is still not getting out, that they're still stuck on their screens. So while we may be seeing, 1 out of every 10 households here going out for, a bike ride, there's a whole bunch of them that I know for a fact are still sitting in there watching movies every day. Because I know I talk to those parents and like, yeah, we watched another 3 hours worth of movies, every single day. I'm going like, what in God's name are you doing? Like 3 hours of movies every single day is not healthy, like for anybody. You got to get out there.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that the parents in this case have made the choice, right? And they've probably been people like you and I. I mean, you and I are kind of getting into that territory, right, where we start sounding like back in my day, we walked uphill, both ways on broken glass kind of thing, right? But you and I really have lived on 2 sides of this entire tech revolution, right? We lived it completely, sans internet, computers, everything, and then now we're living in that world. But we know how to be resilient and handle ourselves outside that, right? We know how to kind of go camping and not worry about being stuck to a screen.
Yeah.
But a lot of, I think, like the younger parents these days, or people who've been brought up with it, I shouldn't necessarily say it's the function of age, but it's how much you've been acculturated and exposed to it, aren't able to disconnect themselves from that. But, for example, I mean, I showed you earlier on, kind of just a shot of my garage. I put an order in for this equipment sometime in December. It only came in March, right? Because it was so backed up by the time they had to start shipping that stuff. I mean, people were already starting to order home equipment in December because, I guess everyone likes to start ordering fitness equipment around that time. But now if you try and order any home equipment, I mean, they're backed up for, 6-8 months.
Yeah, well, it's the same with the biking community. Like we don't expect any new shipments of bikes until September, October. We're heavily relying on repairs right now and like accessories, but there's accessories and parts are now becoming the next issue is, people are bringing out 40-year-old bikes. And it's great to see amazing vintage bikes coming out and looking to get repairs, but unfortunately we're not the only. There's thousands of shops that we just don't have some of the smallest components, because everybody is biking, and like even for us, we were looking for a larger inflatable pool, couldn't find anything. I know trampoline sales are like, you can't get trampolines, and I know for your weights and your equipment, I have family members that they were looking to get just some dumbbells, like 20-pound, 25-pound, can't find anything, and if they do, the cost is like tenfold what you would pay at $1 a pound. You're paying like $75-$80 just for a 20-pound dumbbell.
Well, here's a great opportunity, I think, and again, as much as some of the downer stuff I've said today, I think this is a great opportunity for home innovation. What can you do in order to stay fit? Like, for me, I had, a rusty barbell, that no one wanted. Like, all right, we're going to take that thing. And so, my brother cleaned off a little bit of it. And then when I got it, you take the wire brush to the thing, scrub it down. And like, now it's like down like new. Okay, now the knurling's a little bit, kind of been worked off, but it works. But is anyone going to have the patience to go out there, buy that rusty barbell, bring it back, spend, the 3-4 days that it's going to take to disassemble that whole thing, grind it all down, take that 3-in-1 oil, work it, make that deadlift platform, as opposed to buying something off, like a really expensive thing. Buy those 4x8 sheets of plywood, put that thing down. Do all this information is out there on YouTube. You see these amazing people who are, who will guide you through step by step on how to do it. But take a bigger risk. Try not to watch the YouTube video and then do it on your own. Innovate, fail, work your way up. That type of stuff would build character and resiliency, or that stuff that you can do with your kids and say, well, even if it ended up being a mess, you can look back in 20 years and go, hey, Daddy, you remember when we were trying to build that little platform out in the garage and ended up being all crooked? That's a great story to talk about. That's the type of stuff I remember with my parents, right? Is the happy, the Bob Ross thing, the happy mistakes, right? There's no mistakes, they're just happy accidents, right? Like, there's not much that you can do that'll genuinely cause harm in like a situation like this. If you're just trying to experiment around the home, okay, it's like, don't bug around with the electrical stuff, but like, try it. Try and do your own drywalling. Worst case, you'll have to do it again. Just sand it out and kind of do it again.
Yeah, well, I know how that's going because we've been working on our basement, so we've done everything ourselves, and we usually do. But drywalling's definitely a challenge, especially when it comes to mudding. But another point you bring up, and maybe there's something that we should finish on a high with this is, and I don't know if you probably feel the same, but with COVID, obviously there's been a lot of tragedy. There's been a lot of bad things that have happened. What does the future hold? But I guess one thing is working from home and having my kids home. Like, we're tight. Like, the family's become tighter, and the fact that like I've spent every waking moment with my children, either if we're playing or with helping with homework when we were in school, but like just like to watch the growth of all three of my children. The fact that my daughter Hannah, she can make her own bread from scratch now with no help. And could she have done that before this? Nope. But like my wife and I have taken, this is a point where we can show more of those basics, where if COVID didn't happen, I don't think we would have, we could have had the time, but it might have been more of a half-assed effort to show her. But we have the time to, go through, how you mix, how you measure. Like the fact that my kids know how to measure out flour, baking soda, salt, milk, water, eggs, and use the KitchenAid, set the timer, set the heat on the oven, proof, like doing all this stuff for bread and other, confectionaries and other things we've been making. has absolutely, been a highlight. And like you said, a story for 20 years from now. Remember when we used to, when mom and dad taught us how to make bread? Like it's
Yeah,
it's the little things right now. And I
that's
think,
exactly it. Yeah, like that's the stuff. I think this is where we get to make our choices right now. As much as, yes, COVID is a tragedy, but like what are you going to do? You've been given the sheaf of wheat. You can just throw it down on the ground and start weeping all over it, or you can start beating that thing and trying to get the flour out of it and make some bread. The proverbial lemonade out of lemons. Like, yeah, but in this case it's worse, right? I mean, what can we do? Even if you're starting to make masks at home, we're trying to help other people. Some of the best satisfaction I get, and I'm not saying this is a shameless plug, whatever business you're working at, is to do something that matters, right? I mean, I want to be like Thomas, right? From Thomas the Tank. I want to be a really useful engine man. Like that's, and it doesn't matter. You don't need to be big. You don't need to be massive. You don't need to be the strongest of that. Just try and be somewhat useful, because for me, at least, the personal meaning of that has been be useful, whether it's to my family or to the outside somewhere. And so we'll try and put things together to help our neighbors or help someone or help one another. The lesson I think you're kind of imparting with your kids is, how do you help yourself and one another at the same time? Like you're making food. And what an amazing example that you can kind of set, right? In terms of building confidence, resiliency, self-sufficiency. But those are also choices that you're making, right? So I think there is going to be a little bit of a change, again, in the short term. Long term, yeah, I mean, stuff will go back until the next pandemic. But I think the question really will be, how much of this do we choose to really hold to our core? I'm questioning, I mean, a lot, it's made me do a lot of soul searching. I have the same thing with my oldest son. I've got a younger one, but it's just a few months old. So he's not really in that kind of that play mood. But with my older son, I remember, this was maybe a month back or something. I mean, we'd gone down to one of these parts, the Brickworks. I don't know if you've been there before, but so he loves going down there. So we went out there for a hike, and we just sat up there, and it was on this cool afternoon on this lookout point. And he's 5 years old, and we're just sitting out there just looking. There was no word, nothing. And it was the most soul-filling moment I think I've probably had in my entire life, right? There are kind of no words to describe how I felt just sitting there with him in that moment. No tech, nothing. And I try and build more of those moments, just trying to be really, trying to look at everything with an attitude of thankfulness and just being grateful, going, oh, good God, like I've, this horrible disease hasn't gotten me yet. And, kind of really paying respect to a lot of people out there who are like working hard, trying to heal it, deal with those people who are suffering. But even in this environment, like it deserves a lot of, self-reflection and consideration, going like, we really are in a very fortunate time and place right now. As bad as things may seem, and some of the downer stuff I've said, it may sound like that, but I'm genuinely a passionate person about improving my circumstance, right? In any context that you would have put me into, I'd always try and optimize. It doesn't mean that I'm not thankful. It just means that, we're trying to optimize. And maybe that's the best we can do, is to optimize from here on out. To your point, there are things from the past that we should try and pay heed to say, let's rediscover more of our humanity. So I think if there's any lessons to be learned, it's to remember that we're flesh and blood beings that aren't just products at the end of the day. You don't need to just be yet another click that needs to be monetized and measured. You don't be a data point for data scientists like me, I guess is what I'm saying. And when I hear you say stuff about your kids learning how to make bread, and that makes me personally very happy and optimistic, right? Like if there's one of you, there's got to be more. I'm just hoping there's more of people like you.
There must be thousands, because obviously if you make your own bread and you were trying to find yeast, forget about it. It was literally impossible. So, I think, well, with yeast, like these are it's really interesting, rudimental, like making bread is thousands of years old, and it's like one of the original food groups. It's not even a food group, but just something that people lived off of. It wasn't meat or some form of vegetable or fruit. Like bread has been a staple for thousands of years. Bread has started wars. But also, some of the like old school stuff, like you can't find a sewing machine.
Yeah.
And maybe it's due to people making masks for themselves, for their families, for their friends. Like my wife's made plenty of masks for her colleagues, for family members, for all of us here in the house. But those lessons have, I don't know. I can't even put like a proper thought together on this, but like my kids have been watching my wife, go back to some of this old school stuff. If you want to be resilient, you gotta take the bull by the horns and do it yourself. And, making something out of nothing, and, recycling old shirts, doing some of this stuff it's going to have lasting impact. Bread making, even I joked, even on when I was on Instagram posting, because I say like where I live would be like the school, like our house is the school, and like I would speak like this is home economics, and I have all three kids in a shot making stuff from scratch that they're doing on their own, and my wife and myself are kind of just in the peripheral, just providing guidance, but we're not really getting into their faces about right or wrong. Let them experiment and let them figure out if they're going to make something tasty or if it's going to be god awful. So I'm very optimistic about the time that we've spent together, and hopefully it's for a lot of other families that this is maybe people are going to be more resilient. And I've seen you've seen it too, the amount of community activity and the positivity around helping out other families in need. Like people that are making masks, like they're taking on the cost. They're taking on the cost of actually building out something, providing it to the community and not asking for anything in return, because they know it's the right thing to do, because not everybody is in a position to get masks or sanitizer. How breweries and companies that provide and make alcohol have switched over and stopped making, well, they make their product, but they've also switched and made hand sanitizer, and easy things for them to do because it's all excess stuff that they would have thrown out anyway. Recycle that product and get out there. And obviously there's lots of bad, but I think this has also brought out a lot of good, and hopefully this is a period in time that we'll never forget.
Well, I hope we don't, right? Because first of all, this isn't 1918. This thing happened, right? I mean, we've been through recessions, we've been through this stuff, but somehow we forget, right? So as optimistic, in the moment, we can say, yes, I want to be optimistic. We got to follow the data too, right? These things come in cycles. The choices, I think, and you and I, by comparison, live just a blink in terms of these macro cycles. The thing is, are we going to choose to make these choices permanent? Do we retain this muscle memory, right? Like, okay, we went to the gym, it felt great, we kept it up, and okay, we ran our first 5K, or you biked your first century, after working at it for 6 months. Now the question is, are you going to keep that momentum up? And you talk to neuroscientists, you talk to psychologists, you talk to doctors, they'll tell you the same thing. Like when you put yourself into some type of a safely stressful situation in an incremental fashion, your body will code for new proteins. It will code for new adaptations to be able to deal with that. And it has a profound emotional, mental impact on the way in which you do things. Right? So you're throwing yourself into some type of a difficult situation, the so-called heading out there, and the call to the unknown is important for us, just even biologically. If we hadn't done that, our ancestors would have been just stuck on the plains of Africa at some point, right? They went beyond that ridge, they explored. That's what created evolution. But the question is, just in our own, that it sounds like we're evolving or rediscovering. It's more of a revolution. But do we choose to make that choice and continue to keep that momentum up? Because the product side is perniciously addictive, right? Because again, we've got to keep an eye on the commerce. If we just say, well, everything's all good, we still have to keep an eye on the past and say, what got us here? Do we really want to go back to doing those same things? Do we want to go back to business as usual? Because once people start working again, they're going to go, oh man, Are you actually going to miss your kids? Are you actually going to want to work from home just, 2 days of the week, 3 days? Are you going to try and innovate things that will allow you to spend more time with family? Are you going to change your business model to be able to help people, whether it's a brewery going towards making sanitizers, which I think was, a very helpful pivot. They could have just sat back and said, we're just going to continue to deliver alcohol. But they chose to make a really, genuine choice, which sure, it was profitable for them too. So there's certainly good things to be had, but I think in the larger scheme of things, the tough thing will be to keep the momentum up. It's easy to start stuff. It's hard to continue it. And you and I, before we started, the podcast kind of recording, we were just kind of chatting about, our backgrounds in athletics, the type of stuff that we had done in the past. The hardest thing for me, I'm telling you, when I was training, was getting up at 5 a.m. and continuing to do that. But once I was up and then doing, okay, the momentum kept going. But then like the next morning, getting up every day, like it wasn't easy, but over time, it kind of got you the results. And then the achievement of those results in itself gave me inspiration to continue. But at no point could I just take my foot off the gas pedal. Even if you look at a guy like Michael Phelps, he's not a self-made person. When he tried to go it alone, he couldn't succeed. Bob Bowman had to be there to kind of whip him along his way. And he didn't do well when he tried to be, completely self-driven. So my point is, we need some form of an external coach or inspiration. And in that sense, I think it's really important to have this measured way. If we're going to talk about being, kind of data-driven, write down your goals. Write down what your objectives are. If it's to say, look, today I'm a 6 out of 10 in terms of how patient I am with my neighbor, I want to turn that into a 7 out of 10. Right? You don't want to be walked on, but if you're just feeling that you're having these emotional reactions getting you upset, how do you turn that 6 into a 7 and an 8? Or I want to be able to lose weight, or write down your goals, because that's such an important part. And then have that be at least the first part of your coach. Have your partner keep you accountable for those types of things. It sounds really trite and simple of me to say, all wishy-washy and all woo, but it's not. I think goal setting is really important. And again, why do I tie this back to product? Is because so much of our goals, Ryan, and I just see this, I'm telling you this as a product guy, a lot of our goals and what we do in our day is set by things that are not our significant others and actually don't have a tremendous amount of bearing on our personal satisfaction. Our products that we're surrounded by in our day, to a large extent, set the goals for us. We've discovered what you are saying, from what I hear, is that you have decided to take back control of your own goal setting and the outcomes. That's what's giving you a tremendous amount of satisfaction.
Yeah, it's true.
So the question is, do we maintain that? How do we maintain that momentum when it's so easy to have someone else tell us what to do, or something tell us what to do?
Yeah, it's great. It's food for thought. It's a great, how do I won't be able to keep up some of these things, because eventually people, like not just myself, but a lot of people will have to go back to the office, or, what's the future hold? But hopefully it's such a habit now that we will, like I said, I'll never forget 2020. It's like forever ingrained. And yeah, with the growth of my children in the last 4 months, the relationship. And I think the big thing is it's the communication. You and I talking about offline about, the goal setting and, the ups and downs, the injuries from sports, but it didn't stop you. It didn't stop me. You keep pressing on. And how do we continue, moving on and being resilient, and not the man not telling us what to do, but we're going to tell the man what to do.
That's the thing. I mean, and this is one of those things where we ascribe something to the man, but the man is paying for your investment portfolio. It's paying for your retirement fund, right?
Yeah.
That's what the man is. So this is the other thing. I mean, you and I talked about this on LinkedIn and on social networks. Everyone just goes and says, well, all companies by default, everyone's bad, right? We've all got these dominating power dynamics, and every company is evil, and all bosses are evil. So it's just a matter of shittiness minimization of which company you go for. Every boss is tyrannical. All jobs should be work from home, and if you don't work from home, well, your company is full of crap. Okay, well, we gotta, take a breather, settle down for a minute. First of all, not everything can be work from home, and not every company is bad. And the man is a necessary thing. Like, there's a reason why they call it a job and not, go and enjoy stuff all the time. But it's a lot of it's in the mindset. The other part of the goal setting thing is, well, if you're doing something that you're absolutely miserable at on a day-to-day basis, well, you're just counting daylight, right? Like, why are you doing that? Step back and think, is this a genuine, objective disdain that you have from this? If it's something that you have to do, then you got to figure out how to either change your attitude or change your reality. That sounds like a lot of tough love coming down, but those are the objective, measurable things. If I ever feel an emotional surge kind of coming on, one of the things that I got kind of trained in, whether it's from athletics or from my academic background, step out of the situation, try and write it down. What are you feeling? Why? Trying to understand it before letting yourself get completely consumed by it. So even if it comes to things like goal setting, you got to write it down. You say, I want to be happier. Well, tell me what's making you unhappy. Don't just go on your phone and let that give you the endorphin, kind of rush over there. Don't let that just give you the quick rush of the dopamine going, all right, someone just liked me, let me just put up a quick post. Just sit back. The hard thing to do is to not turn yourself into a product, is to actually have that accountability and to grab control and look yourself in the mirror and say, this is what I'm feeling. Is to have, first of all, that self-congress, that sense of self-communion, and the ability to self-communicate and articulate. And if you're having issues with that, talk to someone else. And especially in a time like this for COVID, mental health is so tremendously important. Whether it's for personal development or professional development, like, you got to talk to your wife or your partner. You got to talk to your coworkers. Talk to people who are not in your immediate circle. There's a big thing about outlier theory, right? That's where you tend to learn the most. Talk to people who are completely different from you and learn from that. But focusing on self-improvement or figuring out how to make sustainable gains in your life is not going to happen from your immediate circle, because it's just going to be echo chamberish type of stuff. You got to get out there literally into the unknown, because that's going to code for different types of things, literally at a biological level in your body. You taught your kids how to bake. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that they could go out and do. I remember my son now is so into kind of gardening now. I mean, he goes and tells my neighbors, well, you got to pull out this layer of thatch, and you don't have enough peat in your soil, and you should check the acidity and all this stuff. And my neighbors looking, I'm like, well, why aren't you inside playing video games? And I'm going, well, because right, we set a goal that we wanted to learn more about nature and how biology and everything kind of works. But I didn't oppressively kind of sit him down and say, okay, memorize this. We got out there, got our hands dirty, looked at the bugs, tried to do this little test in here and say, oh, this is why it changes. And we laugh about it. But behind that was always a goal to say we wanted to understand more about how the world works. Where does our food come from? We're growing our own tomatoes, etc. Right? We're trying to grow our own vegetables. But having that set as a goal rather than an accidental meandering, we do have to have some semblance of intentionality, right? Otherwise, again, we will become, back to that product path. And I know I keep on circling back to that, because so much of my personal existence and my personal definition as a professional has been about technology products. And it is literally about trying to convince people to use your thing more and more and more. And it sounds very ironic for me to kind of, I'm not necessarily debasing, I'm just saying it is what it is. That's the nature of the industry. Right? That's what pays my bills, and that's what keeps companies listed on the stock market. But it's just to have that sense of awareness, is to be self-accountable and set goals rather than having them set for you.
Yeah, I agree. It's it's not an easy subject or subjects to tackle, but I guess at the end of the day, we we need to start making these conversations happen. Start making some tough decisions, because at the end of the day, it's your life you're living, and you really have to sit back and think about what the future is and what's going to make you happy, what's going to make your family happy, your community happy. And one thing another thing we were talking about communication with outliers, like with my community, like with my street, the amount of actually getting to meet neighbors and talking more with neighbors. There's neighbors I had never met in 5 years, never even talked to. Now we're talking all the time now. It's quick little conversations that would have never happened in the past because everybody's been so busy, in and out. And so, you make a lot of good points, and I want to thank you for your time. I'll give you the last word. What else are you up to? What's Elasticare up to these days, and more so, what are some of the things that are Pathways working on currently?
Again, as silly as it may sound to say, we're trying to just be really useful these days. We've taken a step back. I think there hasn't been a single member of our staff who hasn't in some way been touched or hasn't seen, because we've been kind of embedded in the healthcare context. It's really easy to just say, well, this is broken, that's broken, and because it's been intentionally done that way. But I think in the past probably 6 months, we've had a tremendous amount of kind of our eyes open and going, what? Yes, there are things that are broken, but rather than trying to take a negative attitude and just tweet about it and say, well, this is broken, what are we going to do about it? And in that sense, I think our personal philosophy and our outlook, like we are a lot more thankful, a lot more content with, we are a lot happier with what we have right now as individuals and as both these companies, and not trying to chase the next thing at the exclusion of our current happiness. And I think that's probably been the biggest shift in the last 6 months, is just having, I can see that palpable sense of thankfulness from both our companies. As regards to Elasticare, we've tried to take that approach of just being both grateful and constructive at the same time. So that's brought us into a lot of focus, and we're heading into a couple of partnership deals with some places in India to try and make that situation a lot better, because I mean that's kind of one of the epicenters that are globally breaking out there right now. And I think the best that we can hope for is that we would aim to be useful, we would aim to be relevant out there, both relevant and profitable at the same time, which I think is possible. But I think the thing that I'm probably most grateful for is the awareness of this context, and saying we've become a lot more thankful and closer as a team, and and as team families coming out of this. I think some of the points that you raised are exactly what we feel. So we're kind of thanking our lucky stars, and we just we're hoping out there to just go out there and do our best and be useful to people out there.
Actually, I want to thank you so much for talking with me this morning. Obviously, it's a hard pill to swallow, and people, I think, need to, not everybody, but there's a lot of people that are still seeing the world with rose-colored glasses. Or they're turning a blind eye onto the fact that it's not easy right now. It's not going to be easy for many years, and people need to make tough decisions, and people need to stand up, and communicate really what they want out of life, and what they want out of work and out of relationships. And there's a lot to be said, and I know that we're a long ways away from having utopia. But I hope from this experience that the world will eventually, this will bring a lot of positivity. Right now, we're not seeing that, but it's been things that have been building up for a long time. And you can only hold back water for so long before it breaks the dam. And so, things are escalating, but hopefully people will come together in some fashion, and present something far better than what we have right now. And hopefully some of that stuff will come out of where we're at right now. Also, I just want to thank you for being candid. This is not an easy conversation to have, and I really appreciate the fact that we can talk about this. And I've not everybody's comfortable with having these conversations. So once again, thank you so much for speaking with me this morning, and wish you all the best this week. And I'm very happy that things are going well. And like I said, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ryan. It's been my pleasure, and I hope this has been useful for both you and your listeners. And again, like I said, I think you and I have a great, relationship even outside this. So this has been really easy chatting for me. So thanks for making this easy for me. And this didn't feel, any stress at all for me. So this was an absolute pleasure. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much. And then just anybody who's listening to this podcast, actually we'll be leading our TechConnex CIO peer group in September. Topic has yet to be locked down, but if you want to hear more from Akshay, please join us in September. I believe it's Tuesday, September 27th, 2020. It will be an online virtual session with the TechConnex CIO peer group. And I'm really looking forward to that conversation, because we've had Akshay in before, and he makes you think about, where things are going. And you'll be head scratching and looking at things a little bit different, which is always a good thing, because not everything is what it is, and it's good to have people that will provide information that not everybody has accessibility to. So please join us for that. Once again, thank you, Akshay, and we will talk soon.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.